Hello, we continue working on Entity Framework, and just to remind you, we are going to build this application in very few minutes. An application that does edit, delete, update, and add. So this we can do with Entity Framework and MVC. We've actually created a database in SQL Server. We've also created a solution or an application in Visual Studio, but just for the sake of people who are joining just now, I'm going to just start with Visual Studio. We will start by creating a new application. So if you have Visual Studio, please open Visual Studio, and then we can start creating a new application. All this is going to take just a few minutes, less than 10 minutes. This application is ready without writing any line of code. So just go ahead to say new project and choose the second one, ASP.NET Web Application, and just give it a name, second class, second tutorial, because I already made a first tutorial. Actually, this is the third one, third tutorial. So leave everything as it is and just click OK. I'll allow it to be in MVC, ensure this MVC is selected, and just say OK. So at this point, it takes a few seconds to create your project. So remember, click on the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel so that you get updates when I make new videos. Remember, these lessons are free, and if you have any challenge following these tutorials, please leave a comment in the comment box below this video. And also in the description, you can find link to training materials on Entity Framework and MVC. So application has been created. So if you look at the Solution Explorer by the right, this window is called Solution Explorer. So you can say controller, this is model, this is view. So what we are going to do after now, at this point, is to add Entity Framework to our application. So to do that, you simply right click on the solution or the project and simply say manage Nugget packages, because Entity Framework is installed from the Nugget package manager. So this is Nugget package manager for our solution or for our project. We just click on browse. The first tab here is the browse, and just enter Entity Framework. So at this point, we'll have Entity Framework. I typed it wrongly, framework. Alright, so pay attention to this. Don't rush and install. Make sure you select here to be 6.0.0 because that is the one defined in the application. So select 6.1.0. If you select something else, it may not work. So select 6.0.0. And if you made the right selection, just click on install. So it displays a dialog box, say OK, install. So at this point, you can see, if you look at the output, you see that it finished successfully. So at this point, successfully installed Entity Framework to that tutorial. So we've installed Entity Framework to our solution or to our project, so we can close the Nugget package manager. The next thing we are going to do is to add entity data model to our project. We are going to add entity data model to our project. Entity data model is simply a connection to our database in SQL, more like we are doing an ORM, creating a mapping between our table and also a class. So entity data model will simply create .NET classes based on the database table. So to add entity data model, simply right click on your project and just say add, and just choose new item, and then at this point go up and choose data from the list of items. From the list of items here, choose ADO.NET entity data model. So give it a name. I would like to call it people model. So that is the name. If you want, you can give it a different name and just say add. So at this point, you need to choose what should the model contain. Is EF Designer from database. We are going to look at these other ones at a different video, but for now we are going to choose EF Designer from the database, and this assumes we already have a database. You can actually use any database you have that contains tables. Click on Next, and then here you are going to create a new connection to your database, and then we are going to define a new connection. I'm going to use a local server already in my system, and that is a local host. So select the server name, and then the databases are listed right here. I'm using Tutorial DB, and that is the database that contains our table. So test connection and connection test succeeded, and just go ahead to click on OK. So at this point, it needs to save the connection string to the web.config and just say next. If I'm too fast, maybe you let me know, just leave a comment, or maybe I can just slow down. So this next table shows you that it recognizes that there is a table in your database, and that table is called people. There is no stored procedures and no views. In a different video, we are going to look at how to use views and how to create stored procedures, all this without writing a single line of code. So choose people and then go ahead to click on finish. At this point, it's going to add entity data model to your project, and it's going to add a file called that has extension .edmx. .edmx file is an entity data model that actually connects to your database and maps the table to entities in your application. So we'll wait for some seconds for it to complete this process. How do you know it's complete? It's going to add an EDMX file to this place, to this solution. So if you've not subscribed, click on subscribe down below, and also there is a notification button there beside the subscribe. So at this point, it added the entity data model. So if you now look at your project, you can see in the solution you have people model.edmx. Here you have the entity data model diagram. So it's created for us. From here you can actually update your database, but we'll talk about this in a different tutorial. If you have any challenges, let me know. I will respond to you after this video. The next thing we are going to do is to build the project. If you don't build the project, it's likely not going to, the next step likely will not work. So build solution, and everything worked. So now we are going to add a controller. A controller is simply a component or the files that helps grab the database and display them on a web page. And what we are going to do actually will involve creating the HTML views, or the files that will actually display the data to the user on a web page. So we are not writing any code, we are simply following the procedure on screen. So just right click on controller and say add, and just choose controller. You right click controller, add, choose controller. We are not going to use this because this will just create an empty controller with no views, with no codes, and this means we are writing our codes manually. Here we are going to create have a controller with codes, update, delete, select and insert, but with no HTML views. So here the stage one, actually we add everything. We add the codes and also generate the views or the HTML pages. So just select it and click on add. At this point, select the model class. The model class is person data tutorial. I'll show you how it is that is the model class. Maybe I'll just show you now. In the EDMX file, when you added this entity data model, it also created a class for your data. So it actually maps your data to a class. So you can see this class called person.cs has been created. If you open it, it's simply a mapping of your database fields to a class. So these are exactly the same fields or columns in your database. So that represents our model. Okay, let's continue. Go to controllers and click on add and choose controller, and then use the type one and then say add. So our model class is person. And our data context is only one data context when you add an entity data model to your project. So at this point, we've chosen a model and data context. Now we want to allow this generate views. What layout to use? This site contains a master page, like a page that is shared by all HTML files or views in the application. So choose shared and choose layout. This is the layout for all the pages so that the application will look uniform. Click OK and then click. It gives it a name, people controller. If you want, you can change it, but I think it's better to just leave it the way it is. So click on add. It takes a few seconds to add the controller and generate the HTML views for us. So wait a couple of seconds. So everything I think is fine. So if you look at the views, it generates create, delete, details, edit, index. So this is actions you can perform on your data. So I'll explain about these views. This is CHTML file means C# HTML. It uses the razor syntax. We'll talk about this at a later tutorial. But we are pretty much done now. Our application is ready. So what we are going to do is run it, and magically we can see the page where we can see our data, and we'll be able to manage our data from the page. Alright, so we wait for some seconds. So our application is running. So if you look at Solution Explorer, the name of our application is State Tutorial. So yeah, so it's working perfectly. So this is a home page. So if you come here and then you can just go to / people data, because you need to append something at the end to display the page containing the data. So what we are going to append is people, because if you generate this controller, you can see get people. So these people, if you append it at the end of your URL of the application, you get to the controller that manages the people data. So just append people and then we'll see how it goes. Boom. So this is the data displayed perfectly. So we've created a full-fledged application. This is actually how easy to build complex application you see, because this is just a table. If you have a big table or many tables, you can use the same way to build your application. So if you click on edit, you can actually edit, you can create new, and you can actually delete data from the database. So this is where we are going to end. In the next tutorial, we're going to explore a little deeper to see how we can create other pages and see what really is happening behind the hood, in the background, to create this controller and the pages for us. I would like to end here. We'll see in the next tutorial. Please remember, click on the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel to get notifications when new videos are created.